Got a tournament review for you today. It's a 3-game tournament and it's doubles. It's the 1-day doubles dash as part of ARDACON, which is the biggest Middle-earth strategy battle game tournament in the world. Although we're in a very small part of that where there's only 17 teams taking part. It's myself and Louis teaming up. We've got 350 points each. We'll be playing 3 of the doubles scenarios from the match play guide, and only wins and victory points matter for where you actually finish in the tournament. We're using an army I hope that you've never seen before. In my half of the army is Harad and Farharad, led by Suladan. I've got Suladan on an armoured horse, 2 serpent riders, 4 Harad warriors with spears, 4 Harad warriors with bows, and then I've got a Mahud king with a shield and a war spear, 2 half trolls and 2 Mahud warriors, one of which has got a blowpipe. So far, so normal. In Louis' half of the army though, he's gone for Mordor and he's gone for Razgush. That's going to let him take spiders and bats in his warband. So in his half of the army is Razgush, 5 orc warriors with shield, 5 orc warriors with spear, 2 giant spiders, 1 Mirkwood spider and 1 bat swarm, and then in a separate warband, Kardash the firecaller and 5 orc trackers. In theory, we've got a load of tricks here and we should be able to compete against most armies. The trolls combined with the bats should hopefully be able to take out big heroes. We've got 3 attack heroes, we've got the camel. The Mirkwood spider might be able to paralyse any monsters that we're fighting against. Kardash can take out mounts with his flame burst, or he's got fury for the orcs if terror's a problem. He can also kill our own guys if we need to try and end the game quickly. There's a lot going on. It's not our usual themey army. We've gone for we've gone for what we're painting at the moment and then made it competitive. And hopefully we've come up with something that you've never seen before. Now, this was only brought up to us late in the day. What we've got here is a perfectly good singles army. I'm genuinely contemplating taking it to the GT because it was so much fun to use. The issue is, it is an illegal doubles army. It was brought up to us by one of our opponents right near the end of the day. They were completely fine with it, but it probably has impacted the final scores and things like that. So we do feel really bad about it. There's not much we can do now, or at the time. But it's a really great tournament. It's probably the most fun I've had at a tournament in recent memory. It was 3 really high quality opponents, 3 really close games. Enjoy. So for game 1, we were drawn against Tom and Damien, who create the SBG magazine. They also run the GBHL Facebook page, which is a lot of the reason the game is still around. There was a point in time where it was going to die and they basically rescued it. They also run the Battle Streams in Middle-earth YouTube channel, which I'll link in the description. But none of that matters. It's all about revenge. Damien had played Aaron and Louis at the GT, and if you've not seen that video, spoiler alert, he absolutely destroyed both of them. It was down to me and Louis a little bit to try and get some revenge for both of them. Their list was Boromir of the White Tower with the banner, 8 Knights of Gondor and 2 Osgiliath veterans. It was all mounted apart from the veterans. The veterans were apparently there because they hadn't painted enough knights, but we all know that having a couple of archers to drop on an objective can swing some games and make it harder to break your main army. In Tom's half of the list was Theoden, Elfhelm, 11 riders of Rohan and 1 Rohan outrider. Their army was well built for double scenarios. They had plenty of range threat with the riders and the throwing spears and the outrider. They had Boromir with all of his might so that the cavalry can be getting the charge. They've got a decent hero. Theoden obviously maybe not so much, but Boromir a very good hero. And a lot of the scenarios rely on both leaders doing some work. The first scenario was Total Conquest, which has the leaders of the primary force deploy in a section semicircle in the centre of the board. As it's a doubles scenario, you have to roll at the start of the game to determine which one of your armies is the primary force. We rolled and Razgush ended up as our primary force leader and he deployed front and centre, ready to attack either Boromir or Theoden, whichever deployed opposite him. We got lucky and it ended up being Theoden. They tried to deploy as far out as they could, just touching the edges of the semicircle, but inevitably with them having so many cavalry, we were always going to be within charge range on turn 1. Boromir and the Haradrim would arrive later. Obviously Boromir was fast moving with his cavalry. I had a few serpent riders, the Mahud king and Suladan, but the rest of my force was infantry. The scenario itself has 5 objectives spread around the board, 1 in the dead centre of the board and then 4 spread equally around the rest of the board. You get 2 points for holding each objective. with no enemies within 3 inches of it, or 1 point if there's both yourself and an enemy within 3 inches of an objective. And then you get 1 point for breaking the opponent and 1 for wounding the enemy leader. It was all about trying to kill Theoden as fast as we possibly could, and then spread out and grab as many objectives as possible, and hope that we can somehow disable Boromir, or hold him up, or hamper him in some way, or at least make him waste his might points, so that it's easier to take down with one of our heroes. Louis deployed his bats and spiders behind his main battle line, along with Kardush, who would have a very important fireball for Snowmane later in the game. We lost the first priority roll, but then won the all-important heroic move roll-off. Rajgus couldn't quite get to Theoden, so charged on Elfhelm, and then Kardush fireballed Snowmane and took Theoden off his horse. Damien positioned Theoden well, so we couldn't actually get any of our big hits into him, but we did hold him in place with an orc or two. We then just charged as many of the cavalry as we could with spiders and bats and whatever else, just to keep them in place and get as many kills as we could while they weren't on the charge. It was all about just trying to kill as many as we possibly can before Boromir arrives, knowing that the Harad were going to arrive after Boromir. The combat was frantic and we managed to kill a few riders, but Elfhelm and Theoden both lived to fight another day, and Damien's Gondorian cavalry were now fast approaching. Louis tried to create a sort of staggered barrier using his trackers so that they couldn't be heroic combated through, or if they were heroic combated through, at least we'd be making Boromir waste his might points. And then Kardush threw another fireball and took Boromir off his horse. We managed to buy ourselves a turn, but Louis was still having to face Gondor and Rohan on his own, with only my Mahud King and Suladan anywhere near the action. It was pretty rough going, and Louis was starting to look like he was about to break, but I was confident we'd break them as well. Boromir had arrived on the east of the board, and Suladan on the west. That meant we each had 2 objectives. We were going to wound Theoden. If we could prevent Razgush being wounded, hopefully that'd win us the game. It was all about the central objective and wounding Theoden. If we could do that, we'd win. So we got lucky with who the opponent's leader was, the first heroic move roll-off, and with our flame burst hitting both the heroes' horses. That was about to change. We had 14 dice to try and get 1/6 on Theoden for a 50% chance of a victory point, or 2 6s guarantees us a victory point and causes a wound on him. We rolled 14 dice, and this is the result. Not 1/6. He lived to fight another day, and that meant Boromir was even closer. He heroic combated off Kardush and was now right in the centre of the board, in the middle of the action, fighting against Louis Mordor. Luckily for us, the Mahud King managed to get into Theoden and did kill him. They broke the following turn, and the game ended the turn after. We managed to secure a 7-2 win and get some sweet revenge for the GT for Aaron and Louis. We managed to hold each of our home objectives, and we contested the central objective. We'd broken them and wounded their leader. They held 1 objective as their other home objective managed to have 1 Esquileth veteran and 1 Serpent Rider on it. So nobody got any points for that. I actually only lost 2 models with the Harad. I was hardly in the game, to be honest. The Mahud King obviously killed Theoden, and Suladan's banner proved to be pretty useful toward the end. But really, Louis put in an amazing performance. And make sure you go check out Damien and Tom's channel, Battle Streams in Middle-earth. Roll on game 2. For game 2, we got drawn against 2 lovely guys called Johnny and Harry. They were wearing the same team t-shirts as Damien and Tom from the previous game. And well, if you come to a tournament in a team t-shirt, you mean business. So we were probably up against it again. The scenario was Clash of Champions, and they'd brought Thranduil's Halls and Iron Hills. And Clash of Champions is all about kills with your leaders. That's going to be Dane and Thranduil. We got problems. For this scenario, both halves of your army deploy anywhere in your half of the board. You keep track of your kills with both your secondary force leader and your primary force leader and add them together. If you've got more leader kills than your opponent, you get 3 victory points. If you have twice as many, you get 5 victory points. 3 times as many, you get 7 victory points. And if one of your leaders kills an enemy leader, you get 2 victory points. You also get 1 victory point for breaking the enemy. The game ends at 25%, and then the last thing is a special rule where whichever of your primary or secondary force leaders has the least kills, they'll get +1 to wound until they catch up. Again, we're against Dane and some Iron Hills dwarves, and Thranduil and some Mirkwood elves, 2 of the best heroes in the game. Dane's already getting +1 to wound thanks to his burly. If Thranduil gets a kill, he's going to get +2 to wound. It was really going to be tough. They deployed first and showed their hand. They set their dwarves up between 2 tents, and then we deployed Razgush, and then they deployed their elves behind. We were never going to win in a meat grinder against dwarves supported by elves, so we had to think of another solution. Also, if you're thinking the board looks similar to the last games, because we actually ended up on the same table. But yeah, we had to think of a solution. What were we going to do? And then Louis had a great idea. If they've got the shooting superiority, so we have to move at them. But actually, if those elves are shooting our orc warriors and low-value Haradrim, it's denying kills to their leaders. And then our half-trolls and spiders and heroes are going to be much harder to kill for their leaders. And hopefully we'll be able to deny them points that way and just sneak ahead in kills by taking out an Iron Hills dwarf or an elf somehow. We sent Razgush round the back of a tent to flank the elves. He's got a lot of bonuses against them. He might be able to get a kill or 2 there. And then we split the rest of our line, thinking that if the dwarves marched out, we'd be able to surround them, and thinking that they're actually going to stay there and shoot us with the elves and get a few kills and deny their heroes kills. And then eventually Razgush will go around the back and we'll be able to squish them like that. Didn't quite pan out. They took a different third option, and basically they parted their line and they charged out with Dane and Thranduil into each of them into a half troll and a Harad spearman, or a half troll and an orc spearman, and then called heroic combats. We got lucky though. Again, there's a theme of this tournament. We got lucky. They fluffed their rolls, both of them. Had to use a point of might to get their rolls from 5 to a 6. They didn't want to risk the half trolls attacking them back. Then they both managed to make kills, so that put them on 4 kills, and they had an opportunity here to charge into more warriors and take their kill tally potentially to 8, or to attack Suladan and the Harad King, who hadn't heroic struck or defended in any way. They went for the latter option and tried to kill my heroes. Suladan managed to hold off Dane, and Thranduil fluffed his dice again against the Harad King. He used a point of might to get the 6, caused a couple of wounds, and it all came down to a 4+ whether the Harad King would survive.
So we got Thranduil just used all his might to kill the king. 4+ to pass. I've got no might. Big fake roll. 4. Oh. On camera. He's alive.
Another lucky dice roll, except now we were 4-0 down against 2 of the best heroes in the game, but we'd control the game. Aside from Dane and his Master of Battle rule and his 1 might point, we would dictate the play. I think I'd have taken that at the start of the game if you'd have offered it to me, but it was going to require some good, clever play. These were still dwarves, still elves, still Thranduil and still Dane. And crucially, and foolishly, we'd wasted Kardush's will on a flame burst. I think we were trying to take out somebody's horse or maybe the boar, and Thranduil's activated his Aura of Dismay. Kardush has got no will left, and we forgot to sap an orc's will, so we couldn't activate a fury. It was becoming increasingly hard to even get charges off. The following turn after the big heroic combats, we lost priority, and I called a heroic move with the Far Harad King. Dane was out of range with the Master of Battle, but I could still affect him with the warriors around the king, so he called a heroic move with his last point of might. We won the roll-off, got lucky again, and charged Thranduil with the Far Harad King and a giant spider, but everybody else failed their courage checks. We couldn't even get a bat swarm in, so Thranduil did stand a chance here. We tied up a few elves and dwarves where we could, but really our leaders weren't in combat or in a position where they could get kills. Razgush was still coming back round from the other side of the tent to be more in the thick of the action, whereas might points could really make a difference. So you'll be starting to see a pattern here. We've been very lucky with priority and roll-offs and fluffed heroic combats, but for some reason we can't kill heroes. Theoden managed to survive 14 hits, or didn't even take a wound from 14 hits last game. Thranduil, he had 6 dice coming at him from the Mahud King, and 4 dice coming at him from a giant spider, needing 4s and 5s. Didn't cause a single wound. The following turn, Dane's Master of Battle activated, and they managed to charge in on Kardush, so he couldn't get a fury off again. But luckily for us, the not killing Thranduil last turn proved to be a blessing in disguise. Razgush got in on him this turn and managed to bring him down. That gives us our first 2 victory points of the game and our first kill of the game. Suladan still hasn't made one, Razgush has made 1, and they're still on 4. We've got a long way to go, but we're starting to claw our way back into it. Over the next few turns, with the terror bubble gone, Razgush managed to rack up a few more kills, and it was looking likely that they'd break. Suladan and Dane continued to bounce off each other. Suladan just kept calling heroic strikes where he could, and either Dane would win and fail to wound Suladan or fail to kill Suladan, or Suladan would win and fail to wound Dane or his boar. We were getting toward the end of the time now though. The game wasn't going to reach its natural conclusion, and we decided all together that the next turn would be the last. There were a few nothing combats, and then Razgush managed to get a kill. That took our kill tally above theirs, and we were winning the game 5-0. 3 victory points for having got more kills than them, and 2 for having killed Thranduil as one of their leaders. There was only 1 combat left in the game. It was Suladan versus Dane. Suladan couldn't heroic strike, and all he had to do was survive. If Dane killed Suladan, it would break our army and give them 1 victory point. Bearing in mind we have 5. They'd get 2 victory points if he could kill Suladan, as he's one of our leaders. That would be 5-3. And they would draw level on kills with us, and so deny us 3 victory points and win the game 3-2. This was a massive combat. We rolled the dice. Suladan lost the duel roll. It was now all about whether or not Dane could kill Suladan. We just needed Suladan to survive to get the win.
I'll just go up to you. You're on.
So crucial kill. So it's Suladan versus Dane and a couple of friends. Dane has won the fight and Elf has wounded Suladan. Suladan's opted not to take a fake, so he's got 2 wounds left. Dane has got 8 dice, needs to roll 3 4s to kill Suladan.
3 4s for the game.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Oh no, there's so many.
It was so unfortunate. We were lucky that Suladan had held Dane off so long, but to get so far and so close and not win was absolutely gutting. It was one of my favourite games I've ever played, to be honest. There were such great opponents. That's Harry and Johnny. I think they've won most sporting awards at the GBHL before. Love to play them again. Good luck to them in future tournaments. Oh, and Damien and Tom from the first game, they managed to win most sporting for this tournament. So that's why we had such a good time, I guess.
Okay, how do we think we're going to do? It's 3 games, so it's going to be about... You've got to win them all if you're going to win it, and you've got to get massive victory point swings. If you've watched the GT review, you can see we're not actually very good. I want 2 wins, any capacity. 5 4s I'll take. 2 wins.
So at the start of the day, we wanted 2 wins. Let's see how we do with game 3. The final game of the day then was against Jake and Jules, another 2 great opponents. They'd bought 2 halves of an Easterling army. The first half was Amdur leading some Black Dragon cataphracts and a drummer, a pair of Runish Drakes, which they used third-party models for, 3 Dragoncourt Acolytes, a couple of Easterlings and a couple of Black Dragons. The other half of the army was Rutabi and an Easterling captain, leading 21 Easterlings and a couple of Black Dragons. The scenario was no escape. It has your primary force deploys 6 inches into the opponent's half of the board, and then your secondary force arriving from your board edge, effectively sandwiching the opponent's primary force. We rolled, and once again Razgush was our primary force leader, and they rolled, and Rutabi was their primary force leader. That helped us massively, as the primary force leader is worth 3 victory points if you can kill them, or 1 if you can wound them. The secondary force leader is only worth 2 victory points. If you have a banner alive at the end of the game, that's worth 2 victory points if the opponent hasn't also got one. And then breaking the opponent is 3 victory points, or 5 if you're also not broken yourself. For us, that meant Razgush was worth 3 victory points, and Suladan was actually worth 4, as he had a banner and the opponent didn't. Louis was to deploy first. He put down Razgush and the spiders and the bats. He made a mistake and put Kardush on the front line. Rutabi then deployed straight opposite Kardush, with the Easterlings and a phalanx opposite Louis' Mordor Orcs. He was going to have a problem. He was going to have to put up a hell of a fight because Amdor's army was so fast moving thanks to the drum and the Black Dragon cataphracts. Louis had played it well though, and he'd put a forest directly behind him to slow them down as much as he possibly could. I also called Heroic March with Suladan on the first turn to just get as close as I possibly could to Louis. Hopefully my banner would be able to reach some of the combats and give him a little buff until I can actually charge into the back of the phalanx with the King, the Serpent Riders and Suladan. My infantry line wasn't going to be much help for quite a while. So first turn priority was going to be huge. It would allow us to get Kardush out of the way of Rutabi, and it would also effectively move the game 6 inches closer to the secondary forces, depending on who managed to charge who. We rolled, we lost priority, Louis called a heroic move with Razgush. Rutabi then used Master of Battle and counter-called for free. They won the roll-off, and the game was played 6 inches closer to Amdor and his fast-moving cavalry. Not ideal. Rutabi managed to cut down Kardush inevitably, and Razgush managed to kill an Easterling, but actually, other than that, they were kind of pushing each other around. The Spiders managed to hold off quite a few Easterlings. I thought the Orcs were just going to drop like flies. The following turn, my Serpent Riders, Suladan and the Mahud King smashed into the back of the phalanx. It was a big turn. We managed to make quite a lot of kills, and we managed to move the needle on that Are They Broken scale from definitely not to maybe next turn. The following turn was pretty disastrous for us though. We lost a heroic move roll off to Rutabi's Master of Battle again, and Amdor heroic combated off a Orc Warrior into the Mahud King and killed him in one turn, and his Blood and Glory rule gets him his point of might back. So that was essentially a free kill for Amdor, and now he was right in the middle of the battlefield, right next to Rutabi, right next to Suladan, who obviously was worth 4 victory points for us. Suladan, as he had done in the previous game against Dane, managed to survive against Rutabi though, and the next turn would prove pivotal as to whether we could get him out the combat or not. We did manage to win priority that turn, and we managed to get Suladan out of the action and back toward the Harrod line, which still hadn't hit combat. Unfortunately for us, the following turn he was brought down, and that got them 2 victory points for killing their secondary leader. We broke them in the same turn, so we were winning 5-2, but we're very close to being broken ourselves. So we're winning 5-2. We've managed to break them and not be broken ourselves, and they've killed Suladan for 2 points. The following turn, we break. So that reduces our 5 points to 3 and gives them an extra 3. They're now winning 5-3, and our warriors are fleeing everywhere. We actually dropped below 25% in the move phase. We know this is the last turn. We do a Hail Mary and we charge a half troll, a Mahud warrior, and a Serpent Rider into Rutabi. If we can kill Rutabi, we'll get 3 extra victory points and we'll win the game 6-5. If we wound her, it won't be enough, we'll lose 5-4. It's all about this combat.
1, 2, 3. You charged my Serpent Rider, didn't you? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 dice.
You ready?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, I've not differentiated what's what. I'll do it on my wound. Here we go. 6. Oh my days! This is huge.
Is that yours?
Yeah.
Alright, okay.
Okay. So she's surrounded, so I need a blue one for my half troll. Troll's blue, Mahud is red, Serpent Rider's gold.
Yeah.
Okay. So Troll's blue, 1 wound, 2 wounds, and the Serpent Rider doesn't get to, that's not him. So that's 2 wounds. Here we go, for the game. Red is Mahud, strength 4, which is the defense 7. Nothing, and then no rerolls on that. No.
2 wounds.
2 wounds. We've wounded the leader though, those points. There's points on the board.
That's right. Just like Theoden and Thranduil before, with all those dice, we couldn't quite finish her off. We ended up losing the game 5-4. It was another unbelievable game though. They were probably the 3 best games I've ever played at one tournament. They were against such high quality opponents, such great games, all played in the right spirit. Absolutely loved it. It's been a lesson as well in how to play doubles scenarios properly. We've got the Warhammer World doubles coming up where I'm going to be pairing with somebody who's never played the game before. That's Leon, Aaron's mate. He'll be making his debut on the channel. Hopefully it'll go well. Hopefully you'll tune in for that, and we'll see you again soon. If you enjoyed that, please consider subscribing to the channel and help us on our quest to become the home of quality Middle-earth strategy battle game content on YouTube. And why not follow us on Instagram at 2 Trees Gaming, where you can find mini battle reports, miniature showcases, and sneak peeks at future videos. Thank you so much for watching. We hope we see you again soon.